We start this video off with the news of the weekend. Is the dubious behavior from the LDS PR department a sign of deeper issues in the hierarchy? The Deseret News this past weekend has run a hit piece on one of their own church members. This is a church-owned newspaper. Could this be a sign of deeper issues in the hierarchy? On September 17, 2023, we are seeing strange news stories about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints using their PR department to condemn church member, or just in this case one member, but it's happened in less auspicious circumstances before, being condemned who have possibly asked the wrong questions. Many are raising suspicions that they are getting too close to exposing truths no one wants to hear. Reaction from many inside the LDS Church membership itself has been one of shock. Established priesthood officiated processes to discipline this loyal church member have been sidestepped, and the public condemnation of this individual without supporting facts have already taken its toll. They have linked to a tabloid who actually hates the church to be the primary source of releasing what is being called an official statement from the LDS Church. The links have taken to this individual who are on the church website have temporarily been taken off of the official church website, but then they were restored. So if this church tactic to publicly use anti-church websites to smear its own members who get out of line, what if this becomes accepted practice? It would mean anyone with political connections within the church hierarchy could use the official church bully pulpits to deprive a member of disciplinary council hearing who was not appearing to be lockstep with the accepted political views within the church itself. Most of the posted commenters on this Deseret News article take no issue with the way it has been handled. They are joining in on the wild speculation on this man, as could have been predicted when this was published in the Deseret News. These wild comments and speculations are destroying the reputation of this man and heaping scorn on him, but there has not been any actual evidence revealed as of this weekend as to what is going on behind the scenes. Was there an actual disciplinary hearing? Was it done through proper priesthood channels, his stake president and his bishop? The answer to that is no. They are depriving this member of a disciplinary council hearing, and most of these commenters are relishing in that piling on this man's reputation. Here on the Deseret News website, the public and world at large, they are in the process of destroying one of their own church members. And why is that? Is he asking questions that are uncomfortable? An example of one of the comments on the church thread for readers of the story is this: the Deseret News, which has direct contacts in the church's communications department, would never have printed this article were the statement not true. So, in general, the membership follows lockstep with this tactic. There's no concern over constitutional rights being withheld, deprived. Apparently, you can have a public excommunication, as someone said it resembles, without anything but anonymous sources or vague information. And the second Thessalonians 9 through 12. We learn of the era of strong delusions. You were raised in a comfortable interpretation of what has been called, quote, the Mormon religion. And that interpretation became how you define normalcy. You were also taught from a very young age to shun those voices in the wilderness attempting to warn you of Satan's design, to overthrow the institutions you have held dear pertaining to country, church, and society. You were taught to use words such as extremist, to label those who try to warn about the temperature of the water containing the frogs, gradually being warmed in very small increments. No court proceedings have been held, no legal proceedings have been held, which have allowed or would have allowed the man to defend himself. They are sidestepping completely away from these official processes within the church to put this man on public trial based on simple words such as morally unacceptable. Now, what could that be? It could be quite awful, or it could be simply not agreed with your church leaders. There's no denying that the tactic of spearing a man using shady news services to shut down this cause without concrete evidence and findings, it does stoop to a new low of evil we have never before seen in an unabashed display put on publicly by this church. They are sending a statement out through a PR department. Was it a rogue member of the leadership? This article says it's official, and it is saying this is the church's position, and they are distancing themselves from a certain member who apparently they feel has embarrassed them by his stances on serious issues going on in the world. There is no denying that the official reaction from the church will be coming in the following days to, we're assuming it's going to clean all of this up. This video presentation was a pre-prepared lesson on what it takes to destroy a man's reputation. By coincidence, this story happened over the weekend as this presentation was being prepared. The topic pertains to techniques used by Satan to destroy and discredit the innocent. The news story referred here is, like I said, a coincidence, but it does serve as a very good example of how these dark forces operate in the world today. In this presentation, we'll be examining how Satan has been using these tactics for over 200 years in an attempt to destroy prominent figures in the LDS Church, particularly Joseph Smith. Looking for insights into this hypothetical scenario, Joseph Smith is a man who had access to accurate information about societal trends as he was a prophet. We used a program and we came up with a model on how Satan would approach destroying an innocent man. You'll start recognizing these tactics. You'll recognize some of the terms for these techniques to go after the innocent, or for someone who's trying to promote good in the world, trying to spearhead a good cause. Satan doesn't want evil dampered. He wants unfettered reign over the innocent citizens and children of the world. There are also a lot of careers based on false information, and for those individuals, they don't want a change in society. They don't want the apple cart tipped over. In this scenario, we've created an insight is sought in understanding how these careers might sustain themselves and discredit Joseph Smith's message. Here are some strategies and tactics that these false history revision careerists are potentially using. But before that, we're going to talk about the Joseph Smith history in the Pearl of Great Price. We're looking at 1 verse 56, quote from Joseph Smith. In the month of October 1825, I hired with an old gentleman by the name of Josiah Stoll, who lived in Shenango County, state of New York. He had heard something of a silver mine having been opened by the Spaniards in Harmony, Susquehanna County, state of Pennsylvania, and had, previous to my hiring to him, been digging in order, if possible, to discover the mine. After I went to live with him, he took me and the rest of his hands to dig for the silver mine, at which I continued to work for nearly a month, without success in our undertaking, and finally I prevailed with the old gentleman to cease digging after it. Hence arose the very prevalent story of my having been a money digger. So, as everyone is aware who is following modern scholars, this is a popular topic of Joseph Smith's using dubious methods to interpret, or in this case, find treasure. This is a simple matter of when he was 20 years old, he found employment with a man named Josiah Stoll, who had his workers digging in a silver mine. Joseph Smith finally convinced him this is not a good use of your resources. He was in employment, but he was not acting as a prophet. He was acting as a worker who was digging for wages, and he used his knowledge to influence his employer to change his mind about some work that was being done that was actually not going to yield any positive results. The discussion is on the topic of careers built on false information that contradict our prophet Joseph Smith, and how they depend on sustaining error for long-term viability, even in the face of proof that the words of Joseph Smith may constitute the truth of trends of society and the world in general. Suppose a big portion of the societal careers are built and sustained by that false information. What are some strategies and tactics of the false careerists that can be utilized to continue their ruse on the citizens and appear to discredit the message of Joseph Smith? The known and accessible knowledge of the battle over the message of Joseph Smith was a big part of this, as it's we're seeing a lot of research. They go into anti-Mormon sources to learn about Joseph Smith. The eyewitnesses that knew him personally are long passed away. This has allowed a dilution of the true portrait of Joseph Smith. So we investigate Satan's strategy he's been employing to discredit Joseph Smith for 200 years. And this is a simulation of the most commonly known tactics that we are going to be seeing into the 20th century. They are tactics that are widely on display, easily found and searched by anyone who takes advantage of this new technology we have. As an example, if you hear phrases such as "everyone agrees" or "there is just no debate, Joseph Smith did this," what you're hearing is information based on consensus, but it's not information based on fact. They may have found a few anti-church sources that have alleged something about Joseph Smith, but actually these are the kinds of things that careers are built on, when they can find a lot of accurate quotes from Joseph Smith and people of that time, but they also mix in that little bit of everybody believes, everybody agrees, there's no debate because we have a consensus, but that's when they don't have a source to point out. So we go from this statement of Joseph Smith, who is simply explaining why they made these false accusations toward him. It's right there in the Pearl of Great Price. And really that's all there is to it if you listen to Joseph Smith. The present condition of the religious scholar world is foretold in 2 Timothy 4:3. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. And 2 Thessalonians verses 9 to 12, chapter 2. This is the era of strong delusion we're in. The world is fastly escalated into the damned thinking of strong delusion. As scholars in and out of the church, but especially in the church now, they are turning against Joseph Smith. And they do that even a little, some of them, but it's enough. The world ends up fastly escalating or devolving into a strong delusion condition, damned thinking. Many of the foundations of the accepted trained scholar are based on erroneous information and attempted leadership, which tries to sort through this. They're all confused if you listen to them. How do you continue to lead a population and its elected leaders to continue down that path of error and keep them under the bondage of propaganda? When the average person today attempts to learn about and understand Joseph Smith, they will be met with much confusing and conflicting information because authentically verified information on Joseph Smith has become almost extinct in the 21st century. If you ask how we got there, the groundwork to cloud and corrupt this message of the gospel has been laid since before you were born. Looking for insights into a hypothetical scenario where evil forms a plan to discredit and destroy Joseph Smith, we find Joseph Smith was prophetic. He had insight that has not been matched since his time, and that causes some resentment. There's a significant portion of careers based on the false information that contradicts the size of Joseph Smith. If you listen to Joseph Smith, his reasons for coming out west before he was murdered, we find it's almost a different gospel now that's being taught. So again, let's get into the false history revisions that are being inflicted on this church history. And this is a program that helps uncover them. The religious scholar is tied to it. Their judgment is compromised. And the people of Utah over the decades have ignored voices of warning that have come to them regarding this current state of the nation and church and designs of communism to do their works and overthrow the church and the country. We are seeing it today. It's not extreme to say that. It looks like this is a plan that is being hatched. We are being shocked on a regular basis with the depriving of constitutional rights. Let's assemble that model to discredit and destroy an honest person. How do you continue to lead that population down the path of error and keep them under the bondage of propaganda? Here's what the process came up with. Our model was asked to elaborate on careers built on false information that contradict our prophet Joseph Smith and how they depend on sustaining error for long-term viability, even in the face of proof that the words of Joseph Smith constitute the truth of trends of society and the world in general. Suppose a big portion of societal careers are built and sustained by that false information. This is what constitutes restored gospel derangement syndrome. You could even create a term, Joseph Smith derangement syndrome, as it's all about being angry and wanting to discredit Joseph Smith. Do whatever it takes, tell whatever lie you need to discredit his message of the restored gospel. So in discrediting Joseph Smith, we have this list that we came up with in our program. They protect their own interests. The false careers might attempt to discredit Joseph Smith as unreliable, delusional, or biased. They use personal attacks, character assassination, or highlight any inconsistencies in his predictions to undermine his credibility. Creating confusion is another tactic. They can purposely spread false information or conflicting information. They can spread alternative narratives to create confusion among the public. By sowing doubt about the accuracy of Joseph Smith's prediction, they can divert attention away from the truth. Manipulating emotions is appealing to emotions. It's a powerful tool. They use this to sway public opinion. They tug at people's fears, desires, or values. They make it difficult for them to accept Joseph Smith's rational and inspired prophecies or predictions. Manufacturing fake evidence. This is a common thing with anti-Mormons. It's a lucrative career to put a YouTube channel up on the latest new discovery about a man who lived 200 years ago. Suddenly they've uncovered a new truth that completely, in their eyes, discredits Joseph Smith, or at least gives them enough viewers to pay their salaries for the day. Those who personally knew Joseph Smith are not quoted in a lot of this new research. They're not given the same weight. A lot of the new research does use anti-church information that was speculated in the time, such as the money digging stories, allegations, the things they used to discredit and eventually kill Joseph Smith. Some other tactics are lobbying and influencing. This involves policymakers. They could create laws and policies. Controlling the media is another one that many people are becoming familiar as a real issue in the 2020s. They have significant influence over media outlets. In this case of the news story today, someone's influencing media for a very politically motivated purpose, not one that's based on facts, or they would have done it through the correct channels. Building alliances. They form alliances with other groups. In this case, we are seeing church public relations department building an alliance with a very anti-church website that's posted many inflammatory stories using dubious information, aptly named Vice. This news source is an unusual one to be the source of all of these stories coming out. Even the Deseret News is using this as their primary source. The comments are piling on, and it's quite a spectacle right now. It will be interesting to see after this video is posted how the church comes back and patches the situation up. Here's some typical propaganda techniques that we've probably all heard before: creating a cult of personality, promoting short-term gains. They create an illusion of immediate prosperity, even if it contradicts the long-term predictions of Joseph Smith. So they may even trick you into thinking they're on his side, utilizing cognitive biases. Confirmation bias is the tendency to seek out information that confirms one's existing beliefs. It's important to note that in such a scenario, the conflict created by the false careerists with Joseph Smith would likely involve a complex interplay of information warfare, psychology, and power dynamics. This is what this program created. So we're going to kind of expand on what does that mean. These are some terms that are not used a lot, but this is a program that dived into existing knowledge, so we're going to investigate some of these terms. Friendship strategies enemies might take to Joseph Smith would employ the infiltration and eventual discrediting of Joseph Smith's inner circle. It is an underplayed known fact that conspirators were involved not only in the murder of Joseph Smith, but they were still good church members afterward. William Marks was a conspirator who helped prepare the body of Joseph Smith, along with faithful saints. It's later determined, it came out later that he was one of the ones that conspired to murder him. So the complex interplay of information warfare. It can be a significant aspect to undermine Joseph Smith. So here's the elaboration on that. What does that mean? Infiltration and manipulation. Yes, he can infiltrate his inner circle, or after he's gone, the church itself, the leadership. They pose as friends and allies. They use or employ covert tactics. They gain the trust of those who believe they are loyal to Joseph Smith. As you can see, over 200 years since Joseph Smith was first persecuted, his message has been clouded a bit because of the allies and church experts employed by institutions such as Brigham Young University. They have come up with new information so often that you don't recognize the message of Joseph Smith anymore. Isolation and division is another one. They did try this earlier in the church. They tried to isolate him. Many of the early prominent members, significant, important members of the church, turned on Joseph Smith. There was rumor spread, conflicts. Tensions were overplayed and exploited. They weakened the cohesion of the church leadership. Character assassination needs no further comment. That's a very common ploy. They would so-called leak damaging or embarrassing details. Many of them were not true. Sabotage, misdirection, gaining influence. A reasonable thinker would have the following answer for the question of whether these actions could involve actual physical harm or result in the death of Joseph Smith. The depths of evil actions for these individuals or groups they are willing to engage in, they can vary greatly. If false careerists currently living off their laurels of, quote, LDS scholars, it became a bigger lucrative profession back in the era of Mark Hoffman, when he convinced millions of members of the LDS church that a salamander jumped on a rock, and this was the angel that helped Joseph Smith translate the golden plates. There are some of the things they might resort to if they get desperate. Now, it's more sophisticated typically, as the peaceful men who conspired to kill Joseph Smith were not necessarily in the mob. Many of them remained as good, allegedly good members of the church their entire lives, and their works continue today. So here's what our program said. These writers may explore the darker aspects of human behavior, including extreme actions taken by the antagonistic characters. However, in real life, such actions are met with legal consequences, you would assume. But unfortunately, we just don't see people being put on trial for the murder of Joseph Smith. Instead, we've seen a lot of justification since then on why they think they did a good thing to kill him and also remain in the church. So here's some of the more tactics we have. We've talked about manufacturing fake evidence, lobbying and influencing. What about the U.S. Constitution? Doesn't it guarantee rights that these things don't happen? In both real history and speculative scenarios, there have been instances where individuals or groups with powerful interests have attempted to undermine the rights and credibility of those who threaten their positions or narratives. This seems to be something that may be going on in the church today when they desperately go after members who are trying to expose human trafficking, of all things, child trafficking. It's a very ominous time that we live in when we see these people trying to bring attention and end those practices are treated as the evil by those who feel they have the authority and positions to do so, to use that bully pulpit, deny constitutional rights. The outcomes can vary greatly and widely depending on a multitude of factors. So here's some more. The historical suppression of dissent. Is there a suppression of dissent in the LDS Church today? The listener needs to answer that question. Authoritative regimes. Are we seeing this emerge in, well, of course, in the country? How about the church itself? Future hypothetical scenarios. So we're thinking a Joseph Smith figure. What if that were to happen today? Would they still want to kill Joseph Smith? I think just the fact that his message has been diluted would definitely indicate, yeah, more than ever, his life would be in danger more than ever today. It's not the innocent times of the 1800s anymore, where people were seeking truth. The resilience of truth and the dedication of individuals to uphold constitutional rights can play a crucial role in countering such suppression. In the balance between truth and deception, we're hoping that truth at least tips the scale at some point. But as you see in many regimes, governments around the world, that is simply not the case. Who wins? Those with the power are often winning in our world today. It's why we should be concerned about losing our rights. We see this abuse going on in the church. Many of the church members support it. Well, of course the Deseret News wouldn't do something like that. They're allowing speculation to go wild, and they're quoting dubious anti-church websites. How about some transparency and information sharing? How about ensuring that Joseph Smith's insights and predictions are transparently documented and shared with the public? This can include publishing research that is accurate. It quotes those who know Joseph Smith personally, those who were with him. Maybe a little less anti-Mormon research, stories. So here are some other things. Building a strong support network. It would be something for a man like Joseph Smith to do. He did that. The church survived even to this day. Here's some more things that we have in our modern era that this program came up with. Advocacy. Raise awareness about the importance of Joseph Smith's insights and potential consequences of suppressing the truth. Well, you're seeing it today. This is recorded Sunday, September 17th. We saw a big fracture occur in our church today. Well, how's that going to be mended? We will pay attention in the coming days to see how that is moved over. We've seen the denial of rights, and the church taking the initiative to basically destroy its own church member without any legal process, without any process through the priesthood channels. Resilience and perseverance. If you are still listening, recognizing that defending the truth and individual rights can be a long and challenging journey, stay resilient in the face of adversity. Continue to uphold principles of integrity and ethics. Ultimately, the defenders of Joseph Smith must remain committed to the pursuit of truth, justice, and the protection of individual rights. By employing these strategies and maintaining a steadfast dedication to their cause, they can strive to ensure that the message of Joseph Smith is heard and respected, despite the challenges posed by the false careerists and those seeking to suppress the truth. This concludes this video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.